I'm sorry, Mr. Aziz. There was a disturbance.
Disturbance? Another disturbance. Oh, there's a disturbance with you.
So my DCEU video seems to be doing pretty well for some stupid reason, and you guys seem to be interested in me talking about more of those DC movies, so I figured it was about time I did Justice League. I put off doing this for so long. I'd planned on doing it when it came out, but I wanted to see if there was any like ultimate cut or something like Batman v Superman had, so I waited until the Blu-ray, and then the Blu-ray had nothing. Like, those deleted scenes are fucking shit. So I put it off because I wanted to make sure they had, I had it right, and then I got lazy and yada yada yada. Now we're here. It's been yeah, we're fucking late. I'm still not sure if I do have it right, but hopefully it's better than what we got. That's usually my goal. There is so much that you can argue is wrong with Justice League. You could say it's the villain, the plot, the switching of directors, the studio limiting it to 2 hours, the CGI mustache removal, trying too hard to be funny like a Marvel movie, a lack of individual movies to build up the characters. I'm not really gonna voice my opinion on all that too much. We can argue about it in the comments, but I do believe that it's kind of a combination of everything involved. My big problems with Justice League are the plot, the direction, and the runtime. This movie should have been 2.5 hours. I don't know why Warner Brothers thought it could have been shorter, but it needed to be fucking long as hell. I also think that the Steppenwolf plotline that we got was pretty boring. It's not terrible, but it's not great. And I also think that obviously the switching of directors was something that couldn't have been helped, but I think some of the choices Joss Whedon made, along with stuff like the CGI mustache removal and stuff like that, I was not the biggest fan of. So yeah, I've seen rewrites of Justice League that completely rework the story, like from the ground up, new villain, new everything. And that's how I would prefer to do it if I didn't do this channel. My actual preferred Justice League movie would be an adaptation of New Frontier, but I don't think that's totally necessary, since I think it is really possible to just make a couple tweaks that can overall help the quality of this fucking shit show of a movie. I'm not saying it'll be perfect, but hopefully it can get a little bit better than what we got and maybe serve as your own headcanon, sort of like what I was trying to do with that DC video. I would argue that Justice League is worse than Suicide Squad because Justice League is boring and bland, and I think that a mediocre, boring movie is worse than a bad movie because you can learn from a bad movie. You can have fun watching a shitty bad movie. A mediocre, boring movie is just that. It's mediocre and boring. So even though I do think that Justice League is worse than Suicide Squad, I'm not gonna do a total rework with it like I did with Suicide Squad. I'm still gonna stick to the similar skeleton, but it's the barest skeleton. It is a very bare bones skeleton. I stripped away pretty much all the meat off of it. So that means we're keeping Steppenwolf as the villain. Superman does start off dead, and we're keeping the same team: Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Cyborg, Aquaman, and Superman. Anyway, I was too optimistic in my DCEU video, but whatever. Let's just jump into this shit. So the movie starts with the Justice League defeated. We pan across this vista of rubble and destruction. Aquaman's trident is split in half. Cyborg has been torn into 2 pieces. Batman lies on the ground motionless. We see the Flash, and we hear Diana call to him. She's like, "Get out of here, Flash. He's coming back. Go, go, run." Flash goes to help her, but he's stopped by this fast-moving blur. Superman stands in front of him, his eyes glowing red. Diana, with her last strength, she leaps for Superman to give Flash a chance to escape. She gets some good hits in, but Superman overpowers her and just grabs her by the throat. She looks to Flash, and with her last breath, she says, "Run, Wally, run." Wally West starts to limp away. Lightning crackles around him as he picks up speed. Superman starts to fly after him, and Wally breaks into a full sprint, and the screen cuts to black. Okay, I owe you a bit of an explanation. Not for the Superman shit yet. We'll get there. Trust me, we'll get there. But I fucking hated the Flash in Justice League. I hated absolutely everything about him. It wasn't Ezra Miller. It had nothing to do with Ezra Miller. He was just written so shittily. He's absolutely nothing like Barry Allen. And giving him that name is almost insulting as a fan of the character in the comics and the TV show. I get where they were coming from, where they wanted to make him younger. You know, he's an inexperienced Flash, so you can have that youth on the team, and make it also a little bit more different from the show. But it was not true to the character, and an inexperienced Wally West accomplishes the same thing without harming the legacy of Barry Allen. The screen goes static, and we see a shitty vertical video of Superman just saving people from a burning building. It's basically kind of what we got, except he's not being interviewed by some cute kids. As much as I kind of like that scene, he's being interviewed by a 16-year-old Wally West for a school project. In the background, we see people with signs protesting Superman, kind of like in Batman v Superman. Superman and Wally, they have a nice little talk before he has to fly off to help again. The video ends, and the camera pulls back to reveal an older Wally sitting at a computer watching that video. On a TV beside him, the news tells us that it's been 1 year since Superman died, and the world still mourns. Wally grabs his jacket and a small gold ring. and he heads out the door. We get a super similar sequence to what we got with the music and everybody mourning and just shit sucks. But we keep cutting back to Wally as he walks down the street, passing newsstands and altercations to show us how different the world really is after Superman's death. He passes by an alleyway where he stops and he looks in to see a man being just beaten. He hesitates slightly before vanishing in a flash of lightning, and a red and blue streak slams into the mugger, knocking him to the ground. The camera pulls back to a rooftop streets away to reveal Bruce Wayne watching Wally through a pair of bat binoculars. Bruce gets a call through his bat earpiece, and his bat butler Alfred says to him, I hate myself, fuck my life. And Alfred says to him, "Sir, have you located who you're looking for?" And Batman says, "I have. It looks like he works at this mechanic shop in Keystone." And Alfred's like, "Fantastic. 2 weeks of not sleeping well spent. I'm also calling to remind you about your meeting later today with a young woman." Bruce smirks and he's like, "Alfred, you and I both know this woman is anything but young." The camera pans up to the sky and back down again in Paris. We get a sweet little transition shot where we see Diana standing on top of a statue just after the final shot of Wonder Woman. She's looking down at a bank robbery. There are hostages inside and it looks like the police aren't really handling it well. She bursts through the door, she takes out all the assailants, and she protects all of the hostages from gunfire. We now cut to a scene with Lois and Martha Kent at the Daily Planet. We see on the news that there's been a string of kidnappings all around the world by what people are saying is aliens. This fucking new guy piece of shit intern named Jimmy Olsen is assigned to the case, but Martha thinks it should be Lois. We get a little bit on how Lois and Martha are coping with the loss of Clark, as well as just some FaceTime with Lois, because I feel like Amy Adams hasn't really been given a chance to shine as that character yet. Finally, we get our first scene with Steppenwolf. He's using his axe to control the parademons into building a huge machine in the middle of the ocean that's gonna house a mother box. The place is basically just a giant fucking beehive with parademons just flying around. Surrounding Steppenwolf are hundreds of glass containers filled with kidnapping victims, and the parademons keep bringing more in. So we learned that he hates Darkseid as the ruler of Apocalypse. He wants to overthrow him. He thinks he spent too long searching for the anti-life equation, and that he's let this war wage on for too long. So Steppenwolf wants to build a machine to release his imprisoned brother, who is Darkseid's father, to overthrow Darkseid. The machine requires like a kind of tribute in order to release him, like a sort of like kind of life force. And Steppenwolf figures there's plenty of primitive life on Earth, on land and in the oceans. And now we cut to Arthur Curry, floating in the water with his eyes closed. The water starts to get more violent as Arthur's unconscious body gets picked up by the tide and slammed into the rocks. He opens up his eyes to see Mara standing over him. He wakes up, hung over like fucking crazy. He and Mara aren't together yet, but they're like really close and they're basically dating, but like not yet. There's a really strong connection. It's like that kind of like, ooh, are we dating yet? You know, you feel me? Mara warns him that something's coming and Atlantis needs a real king to defend it. Arthur's like, "I'm not a king, I'm not welcome on the surface, and I'm not welcome in the sea, so whatever's coming, it's not my problem." So we now cut back to Bruce meeting with Diana. Diana tells Bruce that she thinks an invasion is already here. She tells us the story of Steppenwolf and how he came to Earth long ago and was fought back by the Amazonians, the Greek gods, whatever lanterns were around, you know, basically what we got. And he arrived with his brother, Yuga Khan, in hopes of terraforming Earth to their image. They were defeated, and Yuga Khan was imprisoned by the strongest magic, the kind of dark magic only a mother box can release. So Steppenwolf is kidnapping Earth's life to pay his tribute to Yuga Khan, and during a solar eclipse, he'll be able to harness their life force and bring him back. And that eclipse is in 24 hours. Bruce and Diana decide it's time to try and form a league. So now we get to introducing Cyborg. This scene is pretty similar to what we got. Vic is super butthurt about being a cool robot guy. There's one major difference. Vic was injured playing football at an away game in Metropolis in 2013. When Zod attacked. He wasn't hurt by the terraforming, but he was horribly injured during the fight between Superman and Zod. This ties Cyborg's origin to earlier in the DCEU, and while we didn't see this happening on screen, knowing the events that took place makes the character feel closer to home. So Cyborg goes out in disguise to get some air, and his mother box just starts to act the fuck up. He can't move, he's jigging out, he's going crazy. And then Wally, who's just leaving his shift at his mechanic job, he notices and he tries to help him. Cyborg pushes him away and Wally gets swept up by a parademon. He escapes its clutches, holds out a gold ring, and a red fluid-like substance flows over his arm, covers his whole body, before shaping itself into the Flash suit. Both Cyborg and the Flash, who are both really inexperienced when it comes to combat, they try to fight the parademon, but they suck. They have a ton of difficulty. Cyborg doesn't even have his cannon yet. Wally gets pinned down, and Cyborg just loses control of his body when a grappling hook pierces through the parademon's chest and gets pulled off of Flash. Wally looks up to see Batman standing in front of him. "Holy shit, you're Batman!" Batman's like, "Come with me. We need you." Cyborg's like, fuck off, dude. No way. I don't fuck with this shit. I'm going home. And he fucks off. Bruce looks to Wally and he's like, are we good? How about you? And Wally's like, holy shit, you're Batman. So Cyborg lands on the street and he starts to walk away when Diana stops in front of him. He tells her he doesn't want to get involved and that they wouldn't want a monster anyway. Diana tries to convince Vic, but he still doesn't want to get involved, and then he goes back to his apartment to think on it. Wally and Bruce drive in the Batmobile, and Batman basically asks what his fucking deal is. And this scene is really similar to the Civil War scene that introduced Spider-Man. We learn enough about Wally's origin and his past, while also learning about his character and why he wants to be a hero. Bruce asks Wally, I was under the impression that the Scarlet Speedster was a little older. And Wally gives us some backstory. So Barry Allen was the Flash in Central City for a number of years. Wally looked up to him, and he managed to recreate the same accident that gave him his powers. He experimented with being Kid Flash, but Barry was so much faster that Wally just wasn't able to keep up, so he left the hero work to the pros. But then one day, Barry disappeared while fighting a villain, and Wally blames himself. He says that if he could have been there, he could have helped him, and so he becomes the Flash to honor Barry and protect his legacy. Bruce sees all that guilt that Wally feels, and he compares it to his own guilt. The guilt over the death of his parents and the death of Superman. And this connection between the two of them convinces Bruce to offer Wally to join the League. So we cut back to Arthur, who's sitting on a dock, drinking some hard-ass fucking liquor. I don't drink, but it's like, think like scotch? Is that hard? I don't fucking know. He looks down to see a dolphin staring back at him. Arthur tries to like get him to fuck off. He's like, hey, fuck off. But the dolphin like urges him to follow him. The dolphin doesn't like talk with words, but he like motions it, and like Arthur understands him. Arthur's like, fuck off, and he reluctantly agrees to follow him all the way back to Atlantis, where we find it in ruins. He swims through the rubble of Atlantis, frantically searching for Mara, where he finds a guard that's been injured. The guard tells him that monsters came and stole Mara along with the rest of the warriors and the mages, and without a king to lead them, they were defeated. And because Arthur is so close to Mara, he feels the need to go after the parademons and save the only person who understands him. Batman, Flash, and Wonder Woman decide they need to act now, and they can't wait for Vic to change his mind. They meet in the crawler, like, troop carrier thing. So Bruce is given a list of the kidnapping victims in Gotham, but he doesn't have time to find anything that connects them, and it could take days to comb through every single one of them and find something. So Wally offers to look, and within 5 seconds of looking, he's like, oh, pretty much everybody who was taken lived or worked within 5 miles of a steel factory. Is that a connection? So Bruce figures that they must be targeting Gotham's steel industries so that they can get materials for Steppenwolf's machine, but they can't find a pattern on where they're gonna attack next. That's when Cyborg shows up and he's willing to help out. He uses some fucking dope-ass math patterns in his mother box to pinpoint the next place they're gonna attack, and that it's gonna happen within a couple hours. So they take the crawler to the factory, where from the outside it looks like a regular Gotham factory, still shitty, but like pretty normal. But when they sneak inside through a ceiling panel, they see that it's filled with parademons, and with the workers being held hostage in a cage before being taken to Steppenwolf. They come up with a plan to have Wally plant a tracer on 3 of the parademons. The tracer will activate once all 3 are in the same spot, which will definitely be where they're keeping the hostages. They need to act fast or else the parademons could set a distress signal and attract Steppenwolf's attention. Cyborg briefly cuts the power to the facility, cutting the lights for less than a second before the backup generator is gonna go on or some shit, as Wally goes to place the trackers. He plants 2 of the 3 before getting distracted and falling to the ground. The lights come back up and we see Wally surrounded by parademons. And then we hear this battle cry. Wally looks up to see Aquaman diving in with his trident. He kills every parademon around him. He's screaming about Mary, like, where the fuck is she? Where's my fucking, ah! And then when he's done, Wally asks where he came from, and he's like, oh, I just followed one of those guys here. It was pretty easy, to be honest. Bruce drops in, is like, fucking pissed. Arthur's like, what did I do? I took them all out. What's the problem, right? And then a boom tube opens, and out comes 24 parademons, followed by Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf is pretty surprised that there are other heroes besides the Kryptonian, but he's not that fucking worried. They're fucking pussies compared to him. There's a quick fight, and the League just can't work together as a team, so they fucking fail. Steppenwolf gets away, along with the hostages and all the materials he needs. Bruce, furious with Wally and the rest of the team, he asks what the fuck went wrong. Wally explains that he saw how scared those hostages were, and it got him in his own head, and he started overthinking, and he lost focus. Bruce says that he knew he wasn't ready for this, and then he turns and he starts giving Aquaman hell. Arthur says he doesn't even want to be part of this team bullshit, and he tries to leave, but Diana gives him a talking. She explains that she knows what it's like to feel like an outsider. She grew up being the only kid in Themyscira, and she used those feelings to find meaning in the world, and that he should do the same. Arthur says that he'll stick around if it means getting to Steppenwolf and saving Mara. Bruce decides that the team needs somebody to rally behind, someone to lead them and inspire them like Superman. He doesn't say that, he just thinks it. Cyborg figures he'll be able to hack into the satellites and use his mother box to scan the world for like energy sources that match what was at the steel factory, and then cross-reference that with the path of the eclipse. It's gonna take some time, so they decide now is the best time to get some rest and prepare for battle. During this scene, Wally sees a red shimmer off at the end of the hall. He goes to investigate, but he doesn't find anything. Bruce and Diana, they have a private talk. Bruce figures they can bring Clark back using Zod's ship and Luthor's doomsday device. Diana says that Clark's not coming back, and it's a stupid idea and Bruce needs to let go of the past. Bruce begrudgingly agrees that he won't bring him back. But he's lying, obviously. Bruce sneaks out to Clark's grave, and he digs it up, and instead of having Flash and Cyborg do it while joking, Bruce does it by himself in the pouring rain. He steals Clark's body, and he takes him to Zod's ship, where he puts Superman in the healing pod, or the healing water, it wasn't really a pod, and uses Luthor's doomsday device to bring him back to life. Kal-El opens his eyes and bursts out of the water. He hovers up above the ground, silent and confused. Bruce explains to him what he is and who he is, and he explains that they need him again to save the world. But something's not right about Clark. It doesn't seem like his mind is fully brought back. But Bruce, blinded by his need to have a Superman in the world, doesn't see that, and he truly believes that Clark is back from the grave and the same as he used to be. Bruce hands Clark a briefcase, and he says, "Here, wear this. I had the ship make you a uniform." So we cut back to the League, and Cyborg locates Steppenwolf's ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Bruce still isn't back yet, and through the comms, he tells them that they'll meet them there. The team doesn't have time to question it, as the eclipse is going to start soon. They go to Steppenwolf's hive thing, and they begin to battle Steppenwolf and the Parademons, trying to save the kidnapping victims while also fighting. Wonder Woman tries to hold Steppenwolf back, but it's just not working, and that's when we see a shadow fall over them. The camera looks up to see Superman, wearing his black suit. Batman jumps down from the Batwing, and Superman just starts fucking wailing on Steppenwolf, like he's beating him to a pulp with no remorse, no hesitation. Diana grabs Bruce and she's like, "What the fuck did you just do?" That's when Bruce realizes he didn't bring back Superman. It may be his body, but this isn't Clark. This thing is some kind of eradicator. Steppenwolf, fucking terrified, tries to boom tube away, but the eradicator drags him back out. Aquaman uses his trident to knock him back because it's fucking magic, and he's like, "Stop, he's had enough." And because of this, Steppenwolf boom tubes away like a fucking coward, and the Eradicator's eyes begin to glow red. Wally looks in horror as the shell of what was once his hero begins to attack his teammates. The League tries to put up a fight, but the Eradicator just overpowers them. He punches straight through Diana's shield and breaks her arm. He just rips Cyborg into two pieces like fucking Megatron. Aquaman, the only person who's been able to get a hit in, has his trident broken in half and impaled into his shoulder. Bruce tries to step in and calm him down, but he grabs him and breaks his spine like it's nothing. Wally, horrified, goes to help Diana, but the Eradicator stops in front of him. Diana distracts him long enough for Wally to escape, and he breaks off into a sprint away from the fight. He starts to run on water, and soon his entire surroundings fade into a blur. His eyes start to water as he tries not to think about what happened. All of a sudden, there's this blinding light, and Wally finds himself back in the crawler, with the League still alive. He goes after Bruce and he explains what happened, and Bruce doesn't believe it at first, but Wally says that Superman showed up wearing a black costume. Okay, yeah, that does sound like something I would do. And Wally explains that whatever Bruce didn't work. So if he's really going to try and bring him back, he needs everyone to get involved. And they all need to be on the same page. Wally calls a meeting with the League, and he pulls off his mask. He says, "I figured it's time we learned each other's names. I'm Wally. I'm a mechanic down in Keystone." Because remember, everybody's been in costume this whole time. They've never referred to each other by their real name. Everybody hesitates for a second, and then Diana steps up. She's like, "I'm Diana. I'm a princess, and you can call me Diana Prince." Cyborg and Aquaman, they both introduce themselves. They're kind of dicks about it, and then they look to Batman, but he's like, "Oh, fuck you." He scoffs and he pulls down his mask. Before he can say anything, Wally's like, "Holy shit, you're Bruce Wayne!" Anyway, so they all sit at a round table, 2 words, and Wally briefly explains what happened to them. Firstly, nobody fucking believes him, obviously, and then Bruce confirms it, and they're all fucking pissed at Bruce, even though he hasn't technically done anything yet. Bruce apologizes, and Wally cuts in, and he says, "You thought you could do it on your own. Believe me, I've been there. We've all been there. But now you have us. So let's talk about this and do it together." They talk about it, and then Bruce makes an offhand comment about Lois, and Wally's like, "Who the fuck is Lois?" Diana tells him that Clark loved Lois, and he sacrificed himself for her. And Wally has like a fucking Jimmy Neutron level brain blast, and he says that Lois is the key. When Barry was the Flash, he once mentioned how Wally's Aunt Iris was his lightning rod, someone to keep him grounded when the stakes seemed too high, or when he was going to lose himself in the Speed Force, he would think about Iris and everything would make sense. Maybe that's what Clark needs, his own lightning rod. Bruce, Wally, and Diana, they agree to bring Clark back, but they won't go through with it unless if it's unanimous. Aquaman's like, fuck it, world's gonna end anyway, worst case scenario, I get to punch the guy in the face. And they all look to Cyborg, who's clearly the most uncomfortable with this, because he thinks his life was destroyed by Superman. He says he doesn't want him back, and he still doesn't trust him, but if it's what needs to be done, he'll do it. And with that, Bruce goes to find Lois. Wally gets Clark's body, something he's super uncomfortable with, but he does it fast, don't worry about it. And Diana, Cyborg, and Aquaman go to Zod's ship to prepare. They learn that Bruce was fucking way off. Using the healing water in the Doomsday Machine isn't enough to bring Clark back as he was. It would bring his body back, but not his mind. So they need to secure him down in the water with something that's unbreakable and pure, like Diana's lasso. They also need more energy than a sun, which is possible with Wally's lightning. And they need to use Aquaman's trident to harness that raw power into something usable by the healing matrix. Cyborg wires himself into the ship, and they go through with the plan. Clark's eyes open, and he slowly rises out of the water. Diana unties the lasso, and Clark looks around at everybody in silence. He slowly floats up and out of the ship and toward the shrine that the humans built for him. He sees it destroyed, and his eyes start to glow red, but then Bruce's car pulls up, and Lois steps out of the back seat. Clark sees her, and he smiles. He floats over to her and they kiss, and Clark looks to the League standing before him. He says, I have a lot of questions, but first off, I'm gonna need a phone booth. We cut back to the crawler, where we see the League sitting at the round table, with one spot left open. The door opens, and Superman enters the room. He sits down at the table, clasps his hands together, and says, so what's the situation? They give Clark the rundown on Steppenwolf, the hostages, and Yuga Khan. Clark says they don't have much time until the eclipse, so the first priority should be the hostages. He says he'll keep Steppenwolf distracted while Arthur and Diana keep the parademon swarms at bay. Wally and Bruce can free the hostages, and Vic can connect into the machine to permanently disable it. Wally says that Steppenwolf might try to boom tube out of there when he sees that Superman is back. And Vic says that he might be able to create a field around the hive that prevents any boom tubing. And they agree, and they head towards Steppenwolf, and they're ready to kick some fucking ass. After the meeting, Clark puts his hand on Vic's shoulder and he says, I remember you, you know. You had an arm like a cannon. Vic looks at him and he says, why are you telling me this? And Clark says, because the day after Metropolis, I went through every single victim's name, and I personally apologized to each and every one of their families for what happened. But when I saw your name, I just couldn't bring myself to see your father. Here was this young prodigy who had his whole life ahead of him, and I took it all away. I couldn't bring myself to look your father in the eye and apologize. But now it looks like I've been given a second chance, and I think it's time I got over that feeling and properly apologized. So I'm sorry, Victor. And Vic is speechless. The apology and the acceptance that he had been needing for years was finally in front of him by the man who he had accused of being responsible for everything wrong in his life. Vic's like, I forgive you. And Clark thanks him. And then Vic says, so what's it like being dead? And then Clark's like, it's honestly kind of boring. But what's it like being a half robot? And Vic's like, yeah, it has its upsides. And so as the crawler keeps flying towards the fucking hive, Wally goes up to Superman and he stammers. He's like, oh my god, Mr. Superman. He's like, hold up, call me Clark. And he's like, okay, Clark, I know you don't remember me, but my name's... And Clark interrupts him and he's like, you're Wally West. We spoke a couple years ago. You were interviewing me for a school project, right? How'd that go? So Wally, freaking the hell out that his hero remembers him, says, well, actually, I got a C-, but that doesn't matter. I just wanted to tell you something. I've never actually been a hero before. Not really. And I don't know if I can save them all. Clark puts his hand on his shoulder and he says, hey, don't think about saving all of them. Think about saving one person. Just take it one step at a time. And from here, the League prepares to face off against Steppenwolf, and we get our final battle. While Superman holds off Steppenwolf, Cyborg tries to disable the Mother Box. Wally goes and saves the hostages, Bruce leads them into the crawler, and Diana and Arthur, they fight off the hordes of parademons. And when the final hostage is rescued, Clark manages to destroy Steppenwolf's axe, releasing his control of the parademons, and he pins him down. The parademons fly away from the hive and they boom tube away, and Clark tells the team to get them out of there so that he can let loose. But Cyborg has an idea. He thinks that he can permanently prevent anyone from ever bringing back Yuga Khan by trapping him inside of the Mother Box. Steppenwolf hears this and he starts to focus on Cyborg. He goes full aggro. Spider-Man, fuck my life. Superman defends his teammate until he gets knocked away and slammed into a wall, maybe through a couple walls. Steppenwolf grabs Vic, and the rest of the League see him in trouble, and they rush to help him. Steppenwolf taunts him about how he's not a man, he's not a machine, and he'll never find a place with people who love him. Cyborg, through gritted teeth, he says, I already have. His arm transforms into a sonic cannon, and he blasts Steppenwolf in the face. Steppenwolf staggers back, and he's hit by a barrage of attacks by the members of the League. The Flash comes in and hits him with a supersonic punch, which sends him flying into Aquaman's trident, who throws him across the room, only to be caught by Wonder Woman's lasso and hit with 3 exploding batarangs. She throws him up into the air, and Superman swoops in from above to slam him into the ground for the final blow. Steppenwolf, scared and defeated, he drags himself away, and he's whimpering like, no, 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 no. This isn't right. They said the world wasn't protected. This was supposed to be an easy mission. Who are you? And he looks up to see the League standing above him, silhouetted against the light. Superman, arms folded, says, you know exactly who we are. Now I suggest you leave this planet while you still have a chance. Steppenwolf crawls into a boom tube and vanishes. Arthur is concerned that he got away, but Diana says that she thinks he got the message. Wally says, "What message?" Clark chuckles a little bit, and we get a voiceover from him, over a little montage showing the team returning to their old lives. You know, the voiceover says, "It's a warning. To anyone who thinks that Earth is safe to conquer, this planet is protected. Among us are some of the world's finest heroes from all walks of life who are willing to fight back and protect what they love. Spread this message throughout the universe. We're the Earth's first line of defense. We are the Justice League." Okay, here's my mid-credit scene. Bruce, Diana, and Clark are sitting at a bar having a drink, and they're talking like friends. We get an explanation about Clark being back and how he's accepted back into the Daily Planet. We get a hint about the Hall of Justice, and they joke about Clark is drinking water because he's a fucking little Boy Scout. And then they bring up the topic about adding new members. That's when the camera slowly pans to a stool beside them, and it zooms in to see a black leather jacket and a yellow canary on its back. Also, I have some ideas for post-credit scene. Yeah, cool. I have a bunch of them. I have a couple ideas for the announced DC movies, some of the millions that have been announced, so just pick what you want. These are some of my ideas. My first idea is similar to what we got. Lex is discovered to have escaped Arkham, and he meets with Deathstroke. He suggests that they form a league of their own, and Deathstroke responds, "Decent offer, but first, I have some business to take care of with a certain boy wonder." And then the camera pulls back to see that they're on Steppenwolf's old hive, which is the shape of the Legion of Doom headquarters. Second one. We start with a newscast showing some of the aftermath of Superman's return. We pull back from the TV. It's turned on at nighttime in a super messy bedroom. There's a flash of green light, and Jessica Cruz sits up in bed as a Green Lantern ring floats in front of her. Final one. Steppenwolf is back on Apocalypse, and he's being reprimanded by a deep, powerful voice off screen for trying to upset the balance. And he's even weaker for failing. Steppenwolf, he quivers, "The Earth heroes are stronger than I expected. Nobody is strong enough to take them on." And the screen cuts to black, and we hear the voice say, "Darkseid is." Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that shit. If you really like this video, you could hit the notification bell and make sure you don't miss any of my stupid updates. Hit me up in the comments if you had any other ideas about how to fix Justice League. I really appreciate the conversation that we've been having these past couple weeks, and I really appreciate the new subscribers and the new viewers we have. I had something I was going to say and I totally forgot it. Anyway, yeah, thanks for watching.